Now we have to check the collision between the ball and the paddle. And the meshes functions, or the meshes have a function that it's the intersects mesh. I think that can be pretty easy, but before we make that, note that our code is increasing, and we have one part of the code inside the render loop, and we have other part of the code below, and I don't like that much, so I'm gonna do a little change in that. I'm gonna enable this function here. It's not yet created, but I'm gonna get all this code, and I'm going to create a function here, function update, and there's where I'm gonna put all the code, right? Update. Now it is the same. I just changed the code to be inside this update function. So in our render loop, we can have the update and then the render, and it will be the same. Now that I want to add the paddle collision between the ball and the paddle, I was saying that the cons paddle collision, it's equal ball, and the meshes have a function called intersects mesh, right? And if we use that, it will return a boolean if there is an intersection between two meshes, in this case the ball and the paddle. I'm gonna add the object I want to check the collision with, and I'm gonna set false at the moment for the precision. So if I have a paddle collision, I want the ball movement in the vertical speed to be always 1.03, right? It's always, because if we have a collision with the paddle, we want the ball to go up always. This is not to change the direction like in this form, because for whatever collision we have between the ball and the paddle, we want to throw again the ball against the bricks. That's why it's just set that with a positive value. So and if I save and I go to the code now, we can see that I can bounce the ball again to the bricks. Now we need to add the collision of the ball and the bricks, but we have an issue here because we need to check the side of the collision with each brick. In this case, it's not just like I'm going to change the direction. If I have a collision, I can do with the intersects here, but I need to know the side of the collision. Let me explain. So if our ball is colliding with the paddle, it will throw the ball up always. That's fine. But if my collision with the brick, it's in the left, I need to bounce the ball right. And if I have a right collision with the with a side right side with the brick, I need to bounce to the right. So even if it's falling, it should bounce here, and if it's going up, it should bounce. And if it's on the top, it should bounce again to the top. And so if the ball hits this brick from below, I need to change the direction. So for this specific collision, I created another function that will give us the side of the collision, and that will help us to know which side we are colliding our ball with the brick. And if I go to the code, I'm just gonna paste the code. So basically we're gonna have this sphere, and the box, there are two meshes. This is for the ball and this is for the bricks. I'm gonna get the position of each one, and that is pretty important because our box and sphere are a scale. They are not to the default size. If you keep the default size, it can be inconsistencies and you might not have a good collision. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just using the extend size world because our ball it's scaled 0.2 with the radius of 0.2, and the box is also a scale. So depending on these values, it will check the distance between the sphere and the box on the 3-axis, and depending on the delta values, it can check if the collision was on the top or at the bottom, at the right or the left, or the front or the rear. And if I don't have any collision, it will return none. With this function here, then we can check on our update method. This is the pedal collision, and this is our brick collision. Here, okay. So here is where I'm gonna put my collision code, and for that I need to iterate for all the bricks. I know all my bricks are inside an array of called bricks, and this is the 4. And const b for the brick, it's equals to bricks at I position or index. And this is something important I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna check the collision against the ball and the bricks if it's visible. If it's not visible, there is no point to check the collision against. So if the brick is visible, I'm gonna start the process of the collision. Const side call collision equals check collision sides between the ball and the brick, in this case just here. So now I'm gonna check which was the size, or what is the side collision. In the case I have a top of or bottom, if I had top or bottom, which is some of the responses I get, and if I have left or right, or front or rear, okay, in this case we are not going to use those because those are for the z-axis that we are not using, but we need to change the direction here. If we have a collision on the top or bottom side, we need to change the vertical speed that we were doing before. And if we have a left or right collision, we need to change the horizontal speed for the ball. So in this case, so the ball movement on the vertical speed, it needs to be changed in the direction. If it's going up, it should going down, and vice versa. So the ball movement, I'm going to do it this way now. -1, and for the left to right will be for the h parameter, so the horizontal. Right here, this is gonna change the whatever it is, we're gonna change the direction. This is not gonna be used, but that's fine. So once we change the direction, and if we know our collision, side collision is different than none, we know we have a collision, right? And if we have a collision, we're gonna make the brick is visible to false. Again, so we're gonna iterate all the bricks, and we're gonna check if it's visible. And if it's visible, then we need to check if there is a collision between the ball and the brick. If we have a top or bottom collision, we're gonna change the direction of the vertical speed. And if we have a left or right, let me check the code. I always confuse the right edge. I think it's right. That's the correct word. Here. So if we have a left or right collision, we're going to change the horizontal speed direction. With that, if the collision is different than none or one of those, then we're going to make the brick false, so we're going to discard from our collision list. I'm going to save that. Okay, now we are having collisions. Now we have the collision between the puddle, the walls, and the bricks, right? Just with that. But we need to add something else to make it more controllable, because if I refresh again, so the ball starts at the moment we are we just start, the ball is in movement. So we need to do something like the game state. I'm going to explain that in the next video.